Hi everybody, I hope this video finds you all doing well today. I am coming at you tonight to talk about the present tense in Espanol. And you've already learned about the present tense. This is just designed to be a quick review for you to help you a little bit maybe in jogging your memory. So we're going to begin with AR verbs in the present tense. As you know, all verbs in Spanish end in either AR, ER, or IR. Those are called infinitives, and they're always translated as to and something else. So for example, comer, to eat, hablar, to speak, so on and so forth. Before we get into our verbs, I want to give you a brief throwback to your subject pronouns. These are essential to all things that you will learn in Spanish class. So we have what I call the magical box of Spanish here, where they're all positioned in a certain way. You have yo, which means I, tú, you in the informal form, él, he, ella, she, and usted, you formal. We have nosotros and nosotras, which both mean we, vosotros and vosotras, which mean you all, only used in Spain, ellos and ellas, that both mean they, ellos is masculine, ellas is feminine, and ustedes is you all, used everywhere other than Spain. These are your subject pronouns. We're going to take these subject pronouns and begin to talk about AR verbs. So think about the verb hablar, one of the very common verbs in Spanish. Hablar ends in AR. In order to conjugate hablar, we're going to chop off our AR. As I tell my students, you have to hobble on down. So you can see we've removed our AR here, and we've hobbled down. We're left with HABL. Next, we're going to take our AR endings and add those on the end. Our correct endings should be O, as, a, amos, ais, and an. These are your correct endings. So altogether, you end up with hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, hablais, and hablan. I want you to take a moment and pause your audio and give the verb bailar a try. Let's see if you can conjugate bailar. When you're ready, you can unpause your video. Okay, now that you've had a second to try these, let's take a look. The first thing we're going to do here with bailar is chop off our AR and carry down the remaining portion of the verb. We're left with B-A-I-L, carried all the way down. Next, we're going to add our appropriate AR endings. We end up with O, as, a, amos, ais, and an again, for a final answer of bailo, bailas, baila, bailamos, bailais, and bailan. This photo is a perfect representation of how AR verbs actually work in Spanish. You're not going to have time to fill out a verb chart really fast and remember all your conjugations, right? You need to be able to do it on the fly. So you can see these two people are gathered here at a table. Looks like maybe in a library. They're studying. And this young lady says, ¿Qué estudias? What are you studying? What do you study? And so she's taken the verb estudiar. She chopped off the AR and she quickly added an AS on the end. ¿Qué estudias? So she's using the tú form. And this lady responds back and she says, oh, estudio matemáticas. I'm studying math. Estudio matemáticas. Again, we saw the verb estudiar there with the AR chopped off, and we've added an O on the end, estudio. I have a couple of other activities here I'd like for you to try really quick with these AR verbs. You're going to select the one that best completes the sentence, and in this case it needs to agree grammatically. So for example, number one, we have yo, and my options are miro la tele mucho or yo miran la tele mucho. Obviously my verb here is mirar, to watch, and in the yo form, my ending should be an O, so our final answer should be yo miro la tele mucho. I want you to take a moment, pause your audio, and give numbers 2 through 5 a quick try for me, please. All right, now that you've had a second to try these, let's take a look. Number 2 says, mis padres, and our options are manejamos un auto viejo or manejan un auto viejo. Our best option here for my parents, or they, would be manejan. Remember our verb ending for an AR verb in the ellos, ellas, ustedes form should be AN. So manejan is my final answer here. Number 3 says mi esposo, my husband, and our options are baila bien or bailo bien. Since we're talking about my husband or he, we would be using that bottom left box. Our ending here should be an A. We should say mi esposo baila bien. Number 4, mi hermana y yo either tomamos mucho café or toman mucho café. Mi hermana y yo, my sister and I, would be we. So we know we're using our top right box, that nosotros box, for which our correct ending for an AR verb would be amos. Therefore, our final answer should be mi hermana y yo tomamos mucho café. We drink a lot of coffee, which is true. Number 5, you're given the subject tú in this case. We know that tú means you informal, and the correct ending for an AR verb to go with tú should be as. We should end up with tú estudias mucho. Do you study a lot? ¿Estudias mucho? All right, hopefully you're feeling better about these AR verbs. Remember also in the present tense you have ER and IR verbs. These work very similar to our AR verbs. Remember, we took off our AR, we added o, as, a, amos, ais, and an for our AR verb endings. For ER and IR, it's pretty similar. Let's take the verb comer, which is a very common ER verb. We're going to chop off the ER in comer, and this time we're adding some similar endings. Here we're adding o, es, e, amos, es, and en. So notice instead of o, as, a, we have o, es, e. We basically changed all of these e's, we basically changed all of these a's to e's here. So como, comes, come, comemos, comes, comen. I eat, you eat, he or she eats, we eat, you all in Spain eat, and they eat. Look at the verb escribir. To conjugate escribir, we're going to chop off the IR. We're carrying down escrib. This is an IR verb, which actually is very similar to an ER verb. So as we take off our IR here, we're going to add a different set of endings. Here we add o, es, e, imos, is, en. So notice, I've highlighted in yellow this time, I've used a different color, for imos and is. All the rest of these are the same as our ER verbs. We still have o, we still have es, and e, and en, but instead of amos for an IR verb, we have imos. And instead of es, we have is for an IR verb. These are some very common ER and IR verbs that you see used frequently in the Spanish language. Abrir, to open. Aprender, to learn. Asistir, to attend, like asistir a clase. Beber, to drink. Comer, to eat. Comprender, to understand. Correr, to run. Escribir, to write. Deber, should or ought to, so on and so forth. These are very common verbs used in the present tense in Spanish. I want to remind you of a couple rules that apply as you're conjugating these verbs. If you want to say that you don't do something, if you want to make a sentence negative, you're going to place your no in front of the conjugated verb. This can be a very common error. Sometimes students say, los niños comprendan no inglés. They understand no English. Well, and that might be what we would say in English, but in Spanish, the no must come in front of your conjugated verb. So we would say, los niños no comprenden inglés. They do not understand English. Remember when you're using two verbs together, the second verb in the sentence stays in the infinitive form. And remember, an infinitive is anything that ends in AR, ER, or IR, and it's usually translated as to and something else. Let's take a look. In this example, we see debemos estudiar en la biblioteca. We should study in the library. Students want to go, debemos estudiamos en la biblioteca, but we can't do that because the verb debemos is already conjugated. Therefore, estudiar cannot be conjugated. We should study. We ought to study in the library, for example. A good rule of thumb is that you shouldn't have two conjugated verbs side by side in Spanish. So since this one is conjugated, estudiar must be in the infinitive form. Let's take another look here. Los estudiantes aprenden a hablar español. The students learn to speak Spanish, or they're learning to speak Spanish. Since aprender is conjugated in this case, hablar should not be. Okay, I have a couple of questions here for you to try now. And this activity is called ¿Qué tienen? What do they have, or what do you all have? It tells you here, cuando tengo hambre, blank un sándwich. So here, you are selecting the correct answer that not only must agree in the correct form, but also must logically complete the sentence with the best word. So number one, cuando tengo hambre, blank un sándwich. When I'm hungry, when I have hunger, I blank a sandwich. When I have hunger, I usually eat a sandwich. So I'm going to take comer, my verb for to eat. I'm going to chop off my ER, and my final answer here would be como. como un sándwich. Number 2, Vanessa y Nelson tienen prisa y blank a clase. So Vanessa and Nelson are in a hurry and blank a clase. So if you're in a hurry, what are you doing to class? Are you comprenden, understanding to class? Escriben, writing to class? Or corren, running to class? My best option here would be corren. In this case, we've taken the verb correr, which was an ER verb. We've chopped off the ER, and we replaced it with an EN because our subject was Vanessa y Nelson, or they. I'd like for you to take a moment, pause your audio, and please give numbers 3, 4, and 5 a try for me, please. When you're ready, you can unpause. Okay, let's take a look at these. Number 3 says, Cuando tienen calor, mis padres blank las ventanas. So when they're hot, my parents blank the windows. My options are deciden, asisten a, or abren. Well, when they're hot, they open the windows. So your option here would be abrir, to open. We've chopped off our IR and we're adding an ending of EN. Abren las ventanas. Number 4 says, Belinda y yo tenemos éxito en la clase de cálculo y blank buenas notas. So Belinda and I are very successful in calculus class and we blank good grades. We sell good grades, hopefully not. We receive good grades, or we learn good grades. Obviously, recibimos was my best option here. We took the verb recibir, we chopped off the IR. We knew the subject of our sentence here was Belinda y yo, or we, nosotros. So we used the imos ending here and ended up with recibimos. Number 5, Cuando Leopoldo tiene sed, blank agua. When Leopoldo is thirsty, he blanks water. Well, he probably drinks water. We're using the verb beber, to drink. We chopped off our ER, and we're replacing it with an E in this case because my subject is Leopoldo. Okay? One more little activity here just to make sure you know what you're doing. In this case, I've given you 3 verbs. Leer, to read, vender, to sell, and abrir, to open. And in each of these options, you need to go through and conjugate the verb correctly. So for example, here in number 1, we see, Mi amigo Gustavo y yo leer muchos libros. My friend Gustavo and I read a lot of books. We know our verb is leer for all 3 of these blanks. In number 1, we're going to take this verb leer. We know our subject is Gustavo y yo, or we, nosotros. So I'm going to chop off my ER here. I'm left with LE, and I know the correct ending for an ER verb in the we form should be hemos. So I'm going to add EMOS on the end, and my answer is leemos. Letter B. It says, Yo blank novelas de ciencia ficción. So I read novels of science fiction. Well, to say I read, we're going to take leer, chop off your ER, and in the yo form, you're adding back an O here. So you get leo. Leo libros, or leo novelas de ciencia ficción. And option C. Our subject here is él. And you're trying to say that he reads novelas de suspenso, suspenseful novels. Ooh, fun. So he reads, we're going to take leer, chop off our ER, and we need to add the correct ending here of an E, because our subject was he, or él. So we're using that bottom left box, lee. All right, now that you've had a little practice with these, I want you to try numbers 2 and 3 for me, please. When you're ready, you can unpause your audio. All right, let's take a look at these. So number 2, we're using the verb vender, to sell, and it tells you here that mi amiga Patricia y yo trabajamos en una tienda. So my friend Patricia and I, we work in a store, and y nosotros blank ropa para mujeres. And we sell clothes for women. So my verb here is vender, to sell. We're going to chop off our ER, and to say that we sell, what are we adding back here? Well, this was an ER verb. We should be adding back EMOS. Nosotros vendemos ropa para mujeres. Option B says that yo blank vestidos. I sell dresses. So if I sell, my verb here again is vender. Chop off your ER. In the yo form, to say that I sell, we need to add back in O. So we should get vendo. Vendo ropa para mujeres. And finally, Patricia sells shoes. Patricia, vender zapatos. We're going to take vender. In this case, vender must agree with Patricia, or she, ella. So in this case, we're going to chop off our ER, and we should be adding an E. So Patricia vende zapatos. Number 3, we're using the verb abrir in this case, to open. It tells us, en la clase, la profesora abrir su libro. So in class, the professor opens her book. We're going to take this verb abrir. We're chopping off our IR. And in this case, we need to add an E because our subject was profesora, or she. So we added back the E here, abre. Letter B, los estudiantes blank sus libros también. The students open their books too. Well, my verb here is abrir, to open. I'm going to chop off my IR. And to say that the students or they open, we're adding an EN to the end. Los estudiantes abren sus libros, because we know that the students would be they. Therefore, we're using our bottom right box, which was the EN ending, abren. And finally, a Elena no le gusta estudiar y no desea blank su libro. Elena does not like to study, and she doesn't desire to open her book. Well, notice, desea is already conjugated in this case, so you're probably tempted to conjugate leer and say abre, just like you did here, and make it agree with Elena. But you can't do that because desea is already conjugated. So Elena does not desire to study, and she does not desire to open her book. No desea abrir su libro. Just like here, we said no le gusta estudiar. She doesn't like to study. She doesn't desire to open. So careful there how you conjugate those. Overall, I would say the biggest takeaway for you is to memorize these endings. For an AR verb, we have o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. For an ER verb, we have o, es, e, amos, es, and en. And for an IR verb, we have o, es, e, imos, is, and en. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you enjoyed it, continue watching the others. Have a wonderful day.